What's going on, everyone? TM24 Plays here, and we are back with some more Marvel Snap content. Today we're continuing our ranking series where we are going to be ranking all the best cards in Snap, but we're splitting it up based on cost. So today we are looking at the 3-drops. Now remember, even if I rank a card that you like low, it doesn't mean that it's a bad card. I believe every card in Snap has its purpose. Every card can help contribute to you winning the game. So just because a card's ranked lowly doesn't mean it's a bad card. These are just my personal preference based on my own experiences. So we are going to get into rankings, but before we do, I'm just going to throw a little graphic up here, and I want to show y'all that most of my views are coming from people that are not actually subscribed. Actually, over 99%. So what I would appreciate is if y'all could take a minute and just go hit that subscribe button for me, help out the channel, help us continue to grow, and allow me to continue to put out content for you guys on a daily basis. But for now, let's get into some rankings. All right, everyone, here we go. We're getting into ranking the 3-drops in Marvel Snap. I believe I've got 42 of them. I think I'm only missing like maybe one, maybe two. I'm not 100% sure, but the first one up is actually going to be my newest 3-drop. I picked him up earlier today. So Agent Coulson, I'll reveal at a random 4 cost and 5 cost to your hand. So he allows you to play on curve, but if you guys have watched my other ranking videos, and if you haven't, I think you should, but I don't particularly enjoy random cards. I put my deck together for a reason, therefore, you know, the odd random card that helps out is great, but I'd rather play my own cards. So getting a couple random cards doesn't necessarily intrigue me too much. So for me, I think I'm going to put Agent Coulson a little bit lower. I think maybe he's solid right around the 20 ranges. I do think there are a lot of strong 3-drops, but remember, these rankings are fluid, so it'll change as we go along. Next up, we got Maximus, 3-7. On reveal, your opponent draws 2 cards. I think Maximus is fairly strong. Obviously, giving your opponent cards is normally not a great idea, but there are ways to kind of counteract that. But on his own, I think Maximus is a solid card to have. I prefer him to Agent Coulson, and I actually think he probably belongs close to the top 10, but maybe not quite in. So for me, I think Maximus is going to line up at 11 for now. All right, next up is Black Cat. If it's in your hand at the end of your turn, discard it. Honestly, I struggle to see the real value in Black Cat. So for me, I'm going to drop her pretty low. I can see, you know, maybe she works well in some discard decks and things like that. But how often do you actually get the chance to play her? I know when I had her in one of my Hela decks, I just didn't. And I actually ended up cutting her for a different card. So for me, I haven't had a great experience with Black Cat, so she's going to be pretty low on my rankings here. Next up is Swordmaster, 3-6. So again, a lot of power. Discard a card from your hand. You know, it's a random effect. So again, randomness, I'm not a huge fan of. I do think he is a solid card. It's a lot of power. And I think I would prefer to have him to Agent Coulson, but I don't think he gets too high on my list. I feel like low 20s is probably an okay spot for Swordmaster. Next up is Deathlock. So on reveal, destroy your other cards at this location. I think Deathlock's really strong, especially with some of the destroy cards in the game. So for me, I believe Deathlock's going to earn a spot up near the top, maybe near the top 5, but probably closer towards 10. And actually, I feel like putting him right at 10. Yeah, I think maybe right at 10. I think I'd rather have him than Maximus at this moment. Polaris, on reveal, move an opposing 1 or 2 cost card to this location. I think Polaris is a solid card. I think she's a little bit underrated. I believe she probably earns a spot in the low teens for right now, but remember, all these cards can be moved as more cards are ranked. Next up is Sabretooth. When this is destroyed, return it to your hand. It costs 0. So I've put Sabretooth in a couple of decks, and I've had moderate success with them. But he does feel a bit clunky when you have him in hand because, you know, typically you want to play like a Deathlock or maybe a Venom on 3. So playing Sabretooth to then Deathlock it so that you can play Sabretooth, you know, later, he just feels a little bit clunky. So right now, I think Sabretooth is probably one of my weaker 3 drops, I feel like a spot in maybe the early 30, mid 30s. Let's gonna say right in the middle, 35, and I feel comfortable with that. Thor. On reveal, shuffle Mjolnir into your deck, and of course, Mjolnir is going to give him +6, making him a 3/10. I think Thor is great. I think he deserves to be up in the top 10, and I feel like 6 is an okay spot for now. Lady Sif. On reveal, discard the highest cost card from your hand. Now, I love Lady Sif. She takes away some of that randomness. She's got a couple of good cards that she really links with, like Ghost Rider. I love that combo. So for me, I rate Lady Sif pretty high. I do think she's probably... I'd probably put her right above Deathlock, I would say. Maybe right at 9 for now. All right, Hulkbuster. Merge this card with a random friendly card at this location. He's 3/4, so essentially you're adding 4 power to a card. I think that's okay, but honestly, it's not the greatest thing in the world. I've definitely seen his uses in movement decks on maybe like a multiple man or something like that. Maybe you put him on a Deadpool and a Destroy. So Hulkbuster definitely has his uses, but I don't think it's all that great, and I think a spot around 30 is probably fair for him. Kingpin. When a card moves here on turn 6, destroy it. I think that's super fun, but ultimately, I don't think it's that effective. They can always fill that lane. There are just too many things that can happen that I think it's hard to use his effect. So for me, I'm going to put Kingpin fairly low as well. Maybe even lower than Sabretooth. I think maybe 37 seems fair for him right now. But he is a fun card, so I do plan on, using him a bit more, making some fun movement decks with him. All right, Cyclops. So another piece of the no ability deck, the Patriot style. 3/4. He's just a 3/4. It's very, very mid to me. So for that reason, he's going to go kind of right in the middle of these rankings. I think that's fair, right next to Hulkbuster. All right, we've got Groot. On reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, +2 power, so he would become a 3/6, which is pretty strong. That's Swordmaster level, but of course you have to hit, and, there's no guarantee that you actually do that. I do think he is probably a little bit better than Agent Coulson, and I think that's where I'm going to rank him. I think I'm going to put him kind of right next to Coulson, but 1 spot higher. All right, and our first real contender for a top 3, top 5 3-drop is Wave. Next turn, cards in both players' hand cost 4. She just enables so many things that I feel pretty comfortable just throwing her up at 1 this early. I think Wave is amazing. She may not stick there, but out of all these cards, she's definitely number 1 right now. Rhino. On reveal, ruin this location. So essentially you're removing the ability. So it's location control, but it's not like it benefits only you. I think Rhino's okay. I did have him in a Cerebro 3 deck, but as I tinkered with the deck, he was one of the first cards for me to actually cut. So ultimately, I don't think Rhino is all that good. At least you're guaranteed to get his ability off. I think he probably deserves a spot maybe in the low 30s. Maybe right around there for now. Vulture. 3/3. When this card moves, +5 power. Vulture is very strong in those movement decks. I've actually seen him starting to be used in other style of decks as well. So for me, Vulture deserves a spot up in the upper half of these cards. Maybe right below Polaris for now. 14 feels okay. Killmonger. On reveal, destroy all 1-cost cards. Killmonger is a very, very strong card. Being able to destroy 1-drops is powerful, especially in his styles of decks where you're running, you're running death and things like that. So for me, Killmonger probably deserves a spot in the top 10. And I would say he's probably close to Thor, but maybe right behind. I feel like 7 is an okay spot for Killmonger right now. Moon Knight. On reveal, discard a card from each player's hand. So you get to remove one of theirs, you lose one of yours. Ideally, your hand and your deck is designed to lose cards. Maybe you hit Swarms, maybe you hit Apocalypse, something like that. So for that reason, I think Moon Knight's okay. He's probably a bit mid for me. I think I would rank him in the maybe right at 20. 20 feels pretty good for a Moon Knight. And next up is Juggernaut. So if your opponent played a card here, move them randomly. I think that is a pretty strong effect, especially if you set it up correctly. I personally haven't used him a whole lot, but he is one of the cards that I always consider and think, hey, that's a really good ability. I can lock down a lane with him. Maybe you storm into Juggernaut and you own that lane now, but he's almost always one of the first ones I end up cutting. I don't think it's because he's bad. I just think that there are cards that are better. And for that reason, I'm going to stick him kind of right in the middle, middle to upper half here. 18 feels pretty good for Juggernaut. Doctor Strange. On reveal, move your highest power cards to this location. So, pretty good in those movement decks, especially if you hit something like maybe you hit a Vulture, maybe you hit a big multiple man. He's solid. Overall, though, I think there are better options, and I think he's probably lower on my list of 3-drops. He's probably right in this area, maybe right next to Cyclops. I think that feels pretty good. Debris. Add a rock to each other location for both players, so you're kind of clogging up the board. I love control cards like Debris. I haven't used her as much as I wanted to, so I'll probably give her another shot here in a maybe a no ability style deck, something like that. But I think Debris got potential, and honestly, I think she probably deserves to be in the upper half. Maybe 16 feels pretty good. Cosmo. All right, we've got another top 5 card here. I think Cosmo is super strong. On reveal abilities won't happen at this location. You can use that to counter your opponent. You can use it to counter your own cards like a Maximus. So I think Cosmo is great. And I feel really good putting him at 3 for right now. I think he's close maybe to Wave, but I feel like these top 2, like 1 to 5, maybe 1 to 4 are going to be pretty flexible. But for right now, I think I'm going to stick him at 3. Captain America. Your other cards at this location have +1 power. So, of course, if you've got 3 other cards there, he's a 3/6, which is really strong. So, I think Captain America is a very good card, especially for, newer players. He's great. So, for me, I think he deserves a spot near the top 10. And I feel like 15 is a good spot for him. Knowing some of the cards to come, 15 feels pretty fair. Storm. On reveal, flood this location. Next turn is the last turn cards can be played here. Another control style card, but I think Storm, I think she's great. I think she's a really strong card as long as you put some cards in your deck that can take advantage of that ability. So maybe you have a strong 4-drop that you're going to play, but you've got to have something to follow her up. So for me, I do think she is very, very strong. Is she above Thor? I think she's above Killmonger, but I don't think she's above Thor for me. So I'm going to put her at 6, and I'm going to put Thor at 5. Next up is Silver Surfer. So give your other 3-cost cards +2 power. Silver Surfer is great. Even before the nerf, when he was a 3/0, giving him +3, he was awesome. I still think he's really, really strong. So I think he deserves a spot in that top 5. I'm going to put him at 4, right in between Cosmo and Thor for now. Punisher, ongoing, +1 power for each opposing card at this location. Punisher is solid, but I think that's kind of the most that can be said for him. I think it's a pretty good ability, but it kind of relies on your opponent, and I would prefer to have the control in my own hands. But he's a solid card. So for me, Punisher is probably best in the middle. I think I'd rather have him than Groot. I think he's really good right there at 22. Nakia. On reveal, give the 2 leftmost cards in your hand +2 power. I could definitely see her uses. So essentially, she's a 3/6 as well. Overall, though, I don't think she's all that strong. I haven't put her in too many of my decks. So for me, I'm going to put Nakia a bit lower. And I think I'm actually going to stick her... I think I'm going to put her all the way down here at 32. I don't think she's a bad card. For me, though, I just haven't had the greatest experience. So I'm going to put her a little bit lower. Mr. Fantastic, ongoing adjacent locations at +2 power. That's a very strong ability. He's used in Cerebro 2 decks. He's used in ongoing decks. He's just a pretty good card, and he's great early on. So for that reason, I think he deserves a spot kind of in this upper half. I feel like 17 to 19 is a good range for him. And actually, I think I'm going to put him right there at 17. Electro. +1 max energy. Ongoing, you can only play 1 card per turn. Ideally, you build your deck around that. I think Electro is great. Of course, his ongoing hurts a little bit, but there are ways to get rid of that, right? For me, he's a top 10 card for sure. I think I'd rather have him than Surfer. Definitely Thor. Cosmo's a maybe. I'm going to put him at 3 for right now. And seeing Lockjaw come up, I already know that I'm going to have to move these a little bit. I think Killmonger's going to have to come down. Storm's going to have to move. Actually, I think I'm going to move Surfer as well. I think I'm going to move Surfer here. We're going to leave Thor at 5. And I think that clears the spot for Lockjaw. I think Lockjaw is going to fit really nicely right there. He's definitely in my top 5 in terms of powerful 3-drops. So I think Lockjaw is great. We've got a top 5 here, but of course, things can be moved. Next up, we've got Brood. Add 2 Broodlings. He was super, super strong when Surfer was, before Surfer's nerf. I still think he's good. I still think he's used in a lot of decks. I think his power level has definitely gone down, though. For me, Brood probably fits in the lower teens right now. I think I'd rather have him than... Maybe it's mid-teens. I think I'd rather have him than Mr. Fantastic. Probably Debris at this point. And I feel like Brood fits quite nicely right there, kind of at 16. All right, Wolfsbane on reveal. +2 power for each other card here. I think Wolfsbane's great. She's used well in, Surfer decks, in Sarah decks, in on reveal decks. So I think Wolfsbane's a really strong card. And actually, I think she deserves a spot close to that top 10. Is she better than Maximus? 246. She's about the same if you hit, but she's got potential upside with no downside. I think she's better than Maximus. I think I would rather have her than Deathlock and Lady Sif, but I think that's where it stops. I think she fits nicely right next to Killmonger right there. Venom. Destroy your other cards at this location. Add their power to this card. Of course, Venom can go crazy, and I think he deserves a spot up in this upper range, which means we're going to have to move some cards. So we're going to start and just move a few of these real quickly. Maybe we should even move them a little bit more. I think 42 for right now. Kingpin feels fine. Maybe right at 40. I am going to drop a Rhino a few slots. Nakia as well. And then all these I feel like can kind of just slide over. We need to create some space in these middle ranks here. So for me, this feels pretty good so far. I think he's still moving above all these cards. I think he's better than Moon Knight. I think he's better than Juggernaut. I think he is better than Mr. Fantastic. I think he's better than Debris. Is he better than Brood? For me, actually, I think I need to switch Brood and Captain America. I think I need to move Brood right there, Captain right here. And I still think he's climbing. I think he's working his way up. I think Polaris is still strong. I think that's probably where Venom taps out. I think this is where he kind of sits right in this top 15 range. Rogue. On reveal, steal an ongoing ability from an enemy card at this location. She can be super strong. She can disrupt games. She can win you games. She's dependent on your opponent having ongoing abilities. It's an on reveal, so it can be countered. I think it's a strong on reveal, though. I haven't used her a ton, so for me, I'm going to rank her a little bit lower. I think she probably deserves a spot. I think I've got to move some of these cards still. I think she deserves a spot in this range right here. Swordmaster, we're going to drop. Same with Moon Knight, Juggernaut, and then I feel like I am going to put Rogue. Better than Captain America. I think this is a nice spot for her, right at 21. Next up is Patriot. Patriot's really strong. You build decks around him. He deserves a spot in the top 10. So we are going to have to move some cards here. Venom gets moved. I think he's better than Maximus. I think he's better than Deathlock. I think he's better than Lady Sif. Better than Wolfsbane. Better than Killmonger. Better than Storm. Now, is he better than Surfer? I think it's close. I think it's really close, but for me, I think he feels a little bit better right around this range. Let's put him at 7. That feels pretty good to me for Patriot. Gambit. Now, I love Gambit. I love these discard decks. I love playing combo decks. He is a 3-1. You do need to set him up. For that reason, I think I'm going to have to rank him a little bit lower, but I do think he's really strong. I think I'm going to put him in the top 20. And I think actually 20 feels really good for him. All right, next up we got Bishop. I think Bishop's great. The types of decks you're putting Bishop in, he can just grow throughout the game. Hopefully you slap him down on 3, and he's just gaining power as you play. I think he deserves to be near that top 10, and I think I've got to move some cards again. I think I've got to move all these cards a couple of spots. I think he even passes, I think he passes Storm. He might even pass Patriot. Maybe that's where he taps out, is right below Patriot. Maybe at 9. I think 9 feels pretty good. But now seeing that next card, I already know I'm going to have to move these cards. I think I'm just going to have to start sliding them. I love Mystique. I think she's one of, if not, she might even be the best 3-drop. Of course, she doesn't have her own, ongoing or anything like that, but she copies those ongoings, and that can be super, super strong. So for me, Mystique is definitely going to be in my top 5. I do think I will put her above... I think she's above Surfer. I think she's above Thor. I think she's above Lockjaw. Is she above Electro? Actually, I think she's above Electro. I think I'm going to have to put her all the way up at... I think she goes all the way up to 2. Honestly, I think that's where she goes, is all the way up to 2 right now. I'm just going to move a couple more of these. I do think I want to make one more change in this top 5 as well. I think I would rather have... maybe not. Maybe not. I'm gonna wait for a second. We're just gonna move these a little bit more. I was thinking maybe I put Lockjaw above Electro, but I've gotten far more use out of Electro. Actually, I feel like Bishop needs to stay. Patriot's super strong. Bishop can't stay. Bishop needs to be bumped 1. Patriot needs to come through. Mystique is better than Surfer. Better than Thor. Now here, do I make the switch? I think I feel comfortable making the switch. And I feel like I've got to move Cosmo. And I think Mystique takes a nice spot right there up at number 2, right next to Wave. So I feel pretty good about that for now. That feels pretty strong. Next up, we got Morph. he becomes a copy of a card in your opponent's hand. I don't think Morph is very strong. I don't like these random effects. For that reason, he's going to be lower for me, and he's going to be in the late 20s. Now, I did get some use out of him early before I had a bunch of access to these other 3-drops, but now that I do, you know, I just can't find a good reason to put him in a deck over other cards. I think he probably fits right there, right past Agent Coulson, right before Doctor Strange. That feels pretty good. Looks like we've got 3 spots left. One of them's going to Ironheart. Give 3 other friendly cards +2 power. I think that's super strong. I think she deserves a spot really high up. She can be played in a lot of decks. Early on, I think she's great. So I think I've got to put her somewhere in this range. So I think we got to move Captain. I think we got to move Rogue. I think we got to move Gambit, Brood, Vulture, Polaris, Venom. Maximus is going to come down. We'll slide him to 17 for now. Yep, rather have her. But I've got a preference for Wolfsbane. So she is going to get dropped in right at 14. All right, Cerebro. Your highest power cards get +2 power. Of course, decks are built around Cerebro. I think Cerebro is a really, really strong card. Definitely deserves to be in the top 10. Looking at these, I do think I need to make a change. I think Surfer needs to come down. I think Patriot needs to move up. And actually, I think Thor needs to move down as well. I think Thor moves here. I think Patriot moves up to 6. And I think Cerebro slides in right there at 7. I prefer Patriot-style decks to Cerebro-style decks. So for me, that's why I'm putting them 6-7. And it looks like we're down to our last card, Green Goblin. And unfortunately, I've got to move a bunch of cards. I think Green Goblin is super, super strong. You can disrupt their play. So for me, definitely deserves a spot in the top 10, which means someone is getting bumped. All these are getting bumped for sure. Does Bishop finally make way? I think he does. I think Bishop makes way. I think Surfer gets bumped. I think Thor gets bumped. Now it gets hard. I use Green Goblin a lot. I play him in Galactus decks. I play him in Control style decks. But in terms of power, I think he fits nicely right there at 8. So I think that's where I'm going to put him. And this is going to be the list. So for me, I've got Wave, Mystique, Cosmo, Lockjaw, Electro in the top 5. Joining them in the top 10, Patriot, Cerebro, Green Goblin, Thor, and Silver Surfer. So you guys can see the rest of the list here. I do want to know what you guys think, so let me know how I did. If I missed anyone, maybe you think someone should be rated a little bit higher, but let me know in the comments. But please be on the lookout for the next one. We're going to get ranking the 4-drops out tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that video. And remember to subscribe and like this video so that you know, you can help the channel continue to grow. I do appreciate all the support. We're closing in on 250K views, so I'm super excited, but I want to keep going here, and I'm excited to do it. So until next time, remember, have some fun.